best defense, a dramatic and surprising end to the Phil Spector murder trial. We are live in California with all the latest and reaction to the controversial results. The best defense starts right now. I'm Jamie Floyd. This is The Best Defense. Well, after more than 5 months of trial and 44 hours of deliberations over the course of 12 days, the jurors in Phil Spector's trial have thrown in the towel, announcing to Judge Larry Fidler they were hopelessly deadlocked. And that led to this announcement from the judge.
At this time, I will find that the jury is unable to arrive at a verdict and declare a mistrial in this matter.
So more than 4.5 years after Lana Clarkson was shot to death inside Phil Spector's California mansion, we still don't know the answer to the question, did Spector murder the actress or did she somehow kill herself? Court TV's Beth Karras was there. She joins us from the courthouse with the latest. All right, Beth, what's the reaction out there in Los Angeles?
Well, you know, it hasn't been too long, and I haven't been really able to work the community too much, but from what I've gleaned, people want to see him retried. People believe that Phil Spector is guilty, and there's a little frustration, but I'm not hearing criticism on the part of the DA's office. I mean, the office took some hard knocks after O.J. Simpson's acquittal and Robert Blake's acquittal, and I'm just not getting that sense right now, but it's only been a few hours.
All right, and I guess, Beth, the folks who matter most in any trial, and this one too, are the jurors, and when it was all over, the judge gave them that standard closing instruction, which includes permission to the jurors to speak out if they wish to the press and others, and some of them did, right?
Yes. After the attorneys and the judge and court staff were done, finished talking to all of the jurors privately in the courtroom, 3 jurors opted to speak to the media in an empty courtroom on another floor. And deputies brought them up. We knew them throughout the past 5 months as jurors 9, 10, and 12, 3 of the 9 men on the jury. And they took a lot of questions from the media, and they enlightened us somewhat about their deliberations. Here's some of that.
Is there one thing that weighed most heavily for different people? Each juror weighed all of the evidence, and I believe that it wasn't just one fact alone.
You know, I voted guilty. I mean, I was one of at the very beginning, I mean, I knew from the evidence and the experts and, you know, and for some reason, I thought it'd be a done deal, you know, in and out. And it wasn't.
They believed it could have been suicide, and there was enough reasonable doubt. See, the defense put enough out there, and it stuck to leave a few with a doubt.
It was the foreperson who was one of the holdouts and was never going to change his opinion. That was juror number 10, the first person who spoke in the blue shirt just now. And with this mistrial, Phil Spector has bought himself, or he's guaranteed, freedom for at least another 8, 9 months, maybe a year, but he is not free of these charges. These charges continue to hang over his head, and he is out on $1 million bail. Jamie?
And Beth, after all of the speculation about the various deadlocks, because it shifted over the course of about a week, what was the final breakdown? I mean, we know that it was 10-2, but we presumed it was 10 to convict, 2 to acquit, and I imagine you've confirmed that by now.
Yes, 10 to convict. At one point yesterday, it was 11 to convict. Juror number 10, the foreman, was never going to vote to convict, it appears, but juror number 1, the one who ultimately was with him in the mistrial, she's one of the 3 women, she flip-flopped, she waffled, and at one point it was 11-1. So, you know, I mean, it was all in the jury selection. This engineer was a friend who had committed suicide, and there was an investigation to determine if it was a suicide or an accident, was just never going to waver from his position.
And certainly no one could say he wasn't conscientious, Beth. He, of course, is that juror that took the copious notes throughout the course of the case, and we're going to talk more about each of the jurors in just a moment. But, Beth, let's talk a little bit about the lawyers in all of this. They, on both sides, poured their hearts and souls into the case, trying to win it, and neither did but I guess you could say neither lost either. Let's start with the defense, because we are the best defense. What are they saying in the wake of this hung jury?
Well, the attorneys on both sides were not going to give a press conference because this is now, it continues to be a pending case, but there were very brief comments made. And on behalf of the defense, Linda Kenny-Bodden, who handled a lot of the forensic evidence in the case, cross-examining prosecution witnesses, putting on her own witnesses, she did make a brief statement. Here's what she had to say.
I don't think you can talk about victories in terms of a case where anybody has died at all. But we think it's a confirmation of the jury system, and we thank the people of the jury system.
How do you think? So, this defense team, which started out with 6 lawyers, ended up with 5 when Bruce Cutler left. Now they've lost 2 more because I've learned that Phil Spector has fired Roger Rosen and Brad Brunon last night, blaming them for the jurors believing the prior axwomen, and Adriano D'Souza, each of those attorneys, had to handle cross-examinations of those witnesses. So they're no longer on the defense team.
Well, maybe he should be thanking them. He might have lost those last 2 jurors, but for the legal team he had. All right, we'll talk more about that, Beth, in a moment, but I don't want to be accused of ignoring Alan Jackson here. He really rose, I think, to be the star of this trial. Despite this result, very few people had any criticisms for Alan Jackson or for his partner there in the courtroom, and for the office in general. As you said earlier, we saw it in other trials, but not so much in this one. What was the reaction from the prosecution team after the announcement of the mistrial?
Well, clearly disappointment, especially learning that 10 jurors voted for conviction. I mean, it was very close to a victory for the DA's office, and their spokesperson, Sandy Gibbons, did make a brief statement to the media saying that they're making preparations immediately for a retrial. So we know there will be a retrial. But as Alan Jackson was taking a break after court, after all proceedings were over, he was chased in the parking lot, and he did have a few words to say. Here's what he had to say.
Is the office going to retry the case?
At this point, yes.
Are you going to retry the case, Alan?
That has yet to be determined yet.
Do you want to retry it?
Of course.
So Jackson didn't want to answer the questions, but he did say, look, of course he wants to retry Phil Spector. It's yet to be determined if he will. He's a formidable opponent, formidable adversary for any defense attorney, and I would imagine that if he wants to try the case, he can retry it, but ultimately it will and should be his decision.
And Beth, I noticed yesterday in all of the excitement sort of buried there, the judge did come up with some new court dates related to this case, and I think they were in October. I guess we don't know exactly who will show up at the courthouse, but when do we expect the next conference, if you will, between the judge and whatever lawyers are still assigned to this case?
It'll be next Wednesday, October 3rd in the morning here. Judge Fiddler will hear from both sides, and I guess hear if the DA indeed is going to go forward, and he'll probably set some sort of potential trial date. I don't know that there need to do any hearings at this point. I mean, most matters have been decided, but maybe a new defense team will have new evidence they want to use, and there'll be some issues to deal with pre-trial. So that's next Wednesday. Phil Spector does not have to be present.
All right, it's not over till it's over. Beth, let's bring in our guests, get their reaction to all of this. We are joined here in New York by our good friend, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Paul Martin, and out in Los Angeles, our recent friend, but he's become a good one to us as well, Darren Kavanaugh. And I guess I'll get reaction from both of you, but it makes most sense to go first out to Los Angeles. Darren, you've been on with us throughout this case. What do you think?
Well, I think ultimately this is a victory, and it's a victory for the defense. And I'd just like to refresh your recollection, Jamie. You went on record long ago when we were talking about some of the deficiencies in the case, saying that in light of the different scenarios that you were playing out with your team back in your office, that it would either result in a hung jury or an acquittal based on those discussions. And so I'd just like to congratulate you on being right on this one.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's why we're the best defense here, Darren Kavanaugh.
That's right. That's right. And generally, you know, these kinds of these hung juries followed by a retrial, generally those tend to benefit the prosecution. They get to see the defense hand. they get the benefit of the dress rehearsal, so to speak. But in this case, I'm not so sure that that's how it's going to play out. You know, Alan Jackson clearly brought his A game, and there were so many fumbles and twists and turns by the defense with Bruce Cutler, the changing of the guard, and lawyers missing out on segments of the trial, and just some really bizarre stuff happening. I think the second time around, it will actually favor the defense.
Interesting, because you are correct. Generally, we think that the prosecution benefits on retrial. Paul, let me come out to you. The reason I stood alone when I predicted a hung jury in this case is that it's such a big case. And most analysts said in these big cases, juries don't like to hang it up. They really feel compelled in a high-profile case or a major case of any sort to come to a verdict. So, Paul Martin, are you surprised that this mistried?
No, I'm not surprised, especially since the earlier note indicated it was 7-5 when and the judge informed them that they had to go back. No, I'm not surprised. I agree it is a victory for the defense. Whenever your client walks out the same door you do, it is definitely a victory. But I do believe that the retrial will benefit the defense for the reasons previously stated. They'll be able to clear up a lot of issues that they had in the past. And you know what? You just don't get as hyped up for that second trial as you do for the first.
All right. Well, then perhaps a bit of a win for the defense here, although it is a hung jury, not a moment of closure for anyone in the case. And with that in mind, let me go back out to Beth Karras. We talked a lot about reaction, and obviously the jurors at the center of a case when there's a deadlock. But let's talk a little bit about Phil Spector and the Clarksons in that courtroom and the reaction, if any, because, you know, Judge Fidler runs a tight ship. There can't be any outbursts or too much emotion, but what kind of reaction there in the courtroom? We'll talk more about press conferences in a minute as the news of the deadlock was formalized by Judge Fidler with his finding of a mistrial.
Well, you know, everyone was pretty stoic. It didn't really come as a surprise, only because it was sort of a replay of what happened last week. Jurors buzz in the morning. We're told that there's going to be a proceeding or a session at 1:30. Jurors have suspended deliberations for an extended period, not just a lunch hour, but an additional hour or so. So it sounded as though they were at an impasse again. Everybody was sort of waiting to see what the breakdown would be, and more importantly, if they were at an impasse when the judge polled the jury, would any jurors say that it would still be worthwhile to continue deliberating as they did last week? So would it be over or not? I mean, that's what we're all sort of waiting to hear. The family, you know, clearly disappointed, but I'm sure, you know, heartened somewhat to hear that 10 jurors believed he was guilty and were willing to send him, you know, to prison.
All right, well, we are going to talk a lot more about those very points. We will talk about the reaction of the Clarkson family and talk with one of the jurors who was back there, one of those who voted to convict here on The Best Defense. Right now, though, it is time for a break. As we go to break, why don't you go to your computers and let us know what you think about the mistrial in this case. You can email us by logging on to courttvnews.com/contact. Then you click on Best Defense. And as we go to break, here's what two of you had to say in reaction to the verdict. What a mockery of our jury system, writes Mary in Canada. I and many others are frustrated and angry with the whole thing. But Lynn in New Mexico says the prosecution made a big mistake with second degree. They should have had the common sense to allow for a lesser charge. And she hopes they'll do better next time.
They're ready for anything. And they'll stop at nothing to get their man.
I got what I came for.
These are real bounty hunters.
Get out of the car.
Tracking down Miami's most dangerous criminals.
Come out of the house with your hands up.
This is as hot as pursuit gets.
I got what I came for.
Bounty Girls, Miami. An all-new episode tonight at 10, only on Court TV.
If you're injured in an accident, physical therapy can get you back into shape. But what about your finances? If you have a structured settlement or annuity, J.G. Wentworth can help you with cash to get back on track. J.G. Wentworth has helped tens of thousands of Americans to get cash for their settlements, to pay their bills, take care of medical expenses, or even to start a new business. It's your money. Use it when you need it. Call J.G. Wentworth today.
Call 866-393-4970.
I'm Mark Goldston, Chairman and CEO of Net Zero. All internet providers take you to the same internet, so why pay more to get there?
Net Zero is only $9.95 a month, and we give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 1-800-NET-ZERO or visit netzero.com.
Hey, there's that Bamzoo spot.
Oh, I love Bamzoo.com.
Bamzoo has many of the great products advertised on Turner Broadcasting.
It's easy to shop online. No run into stores or remembering phone numbers. Just log on.
You know, we could do a Bamzoo commercial.
You think?
All right, step right up. This is what's gonna happen. All right, just in time to see the action. Here we go, here we go.
What happened to your phone bill? Remember that great promotional rates? Those special offers, bundled services? Well, now, those great low rates
I'm sorry, that's expired.
have disappeared. And so is your money. It's called the shell game. And the phone and cable companies think they can get away with it. Well, now, you can beat them at their own game. How? Vonage! With Vonage, you can save up to $300 a year. Did your phone rate start here and keep going up? With Vonage, your rate starts low and stays low.
I'm saving money by just having the phone line through them versus bundling.
No nickels and dimes like the phone company.
With all the local and long-distance calls you want, plus free calls to Europe and international rates as low as a penny a minute. And 25 premium features, including voicemail plus, call waiting, caller ID, call forwarding, and three-way calling, all for just $24.99 a month. And with Vonage, you get to keep your number for life.
Sign up now and get 1 month free. Enjoy crystal clear digital sound quality using your high-speed internet connection. Call Europe for free and anywhere else for as low as a penny a minute. And setting Vonage up is easy. Or if you don't have time, we can come to your house and do it for you.
Within 5 minutes, I had it set up, plugged in, and had a dial tone.
I'd probably recommended Vonage to a dozen people this week alone.
Awesome service. I can take you where I want to. I can call internationally, long distance. Getting my voicemail over the email, I love it. It's awesome.
Call 1-800-648-2716. That's 1-800-648-2716. Or go online to noshellgames.com.
Tell them you're not going to play their little game anymore. Tell them you're switching to Vonage.
From the creator of Cops.
We have the product for a small party.
All right. Inside American Jail.
You on fire, man.
An all-new episode.
Thanks for arresting him.
Premieres tonight at 8:30 on Court TV.
I'm not an idiot, and the jurors are not idiots. We know maybe not everything, but I think for the most part, I was insulted by the defense and the stuff that they threw.
That's juror number 9, and he says he believes Phil Spector is guilty. 2 other jurors did not agree. And the question now is, because a mistrial has been declared, will the prosecutors try Phil Spector a second time around for the murder of Lana Clarkson? Beth Karras still with us outside the L.A. County Courthouse. And Beth, some of what I'm sure Alan Jackson and his team will think about will be the Clarkson family. And there was a little more reaction from them, not in the courtroom when the mistrial was declared by Judge Fidler, but thereafter. Tell us a little bit about the Clarksons in the wake of this news.
Well, there was disappointment, as you can imagine, but people aren't giving up. And civil attorney John Taylor, one of 2 attorneys representing the Clarkson family in the wrongful death suit against Spector, which is pending, did make a brief statement to the media. Here's what he had to say.
We support the decision of the district attorney in this case, and we will be present at the retrial. We will not rest until justice is done. We appreciate the support that's been shown to the Clarkson family, and we also appreciate the respect that the media has extended to the family as well. Thank you very much.
John Taylor also told me that they should know in about a week or so if the civil trial is going to have to push forward before the next criminal trial, or whether or not it will simply track and follow the criminal trial.
Yeah, which is certainly a better thing for civil lawyers, because then the fact of conviction is admissible in the civil courtroom. Beth, of course, the Clarksons' wishes will be factored in. What else will Pat Dixon and Alan Jackson take into account when determining, with their office, of course, whether to pursue Mr. Spector again, and if so, on what charges?
Well, they'll go forward on the murder charge, which is second-degree murder. I mean, the indictment doesn't state a degree, but it is second-degree murder. They will go forward on that. If these jurors said yesterday, if they had the manslaughter as a lesser, it wouldn't have made a difference, because the two holdouts were concerned about whether or not it was a suicide, not whether or not Phil Spector had committed a crime less than murder. So it would not have mattered. I suspect that the judge will give manslaughter next time around, even if both sides don't want it, as was the case here. And the judge probably, if he could turn the clock back, would have given manslaughter, but we hear it wouldn't have made a difference. So, I mean, this office has to take a step back, and does the DA's office, and reevaluate. I mean, they're going to retry it. Who's going to retry it, and what their approach is probably going to be the same. I mean, I've heard so many people around here say, including, I mean, on our air, that this was really a perfectly tried case on the part of the prosecution, so I don't think they'll change much.
All right, as Darren Kavanaugh said, they brought their A game to the table, and they'll do that again, no doubt, next time around. As Beth reports, it'll be 8 months, 9 months, maybe even a year before we see the inside of another Phil Spector courtroom. Right now, we are so pleased to be joined by a man who sat in that courtroom for the better part of 5 months and then deliberated with due diligence for the better part of 3 weeks. It was actually 12 days of deliberation, but it seemed endless. Ricardo Enriquez, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome, Jamie.
Now, I understand that you've been interviewed quite a bit. You had the press conference. You were on open court this morning. But for the benefit of our viewers who may have seen none of that, we're going to start fresh, Ricardo. And let's talk about your feelings this morning. Now that you've had a chance to sleep on it, digest everything that's gone on, just give us your sense of things today, and then we'll pick up with some of the detail.
Well, I mean, you know, hindsight is 20/20. I wish there was something more that I could have done to try to convince the other two, so we could have come to a consensus and a guilty verdict. That didn't happen. I think, as anything else, we look forward and maybe Spector too. I can't really go back there anymore. It was pretty painful. It was difficult for all of us, actually. A lot of time that we put into this, and let's see what happens next time.
You know, I said on my program yesterday, when we anticipated this hung jury, and then again when we learned about it, that a jury that hangs should be as proud of itself as any jury that reaches a conviction or an acquittal, because a hung jury's a result nonetheless. You all deliberated very conscientiously. You worked back there as diligently as any jury that we've seen, and if two felt that the prosecution hadn't met its burden, well, that's their decision, and you had your decision, which was that they'd proved a conviction. So all of that makes sense, I guess, as an intellectual matter, but it doesn't sound as though you feel that way.
You know, there's this whole, you know, Monday night, you know, quarterback. At the same time, I don't think the prosecution could have done anything different. My opinion, the defense put some reasonable doubt in two people, and it worked.
You know, there's some pretty hard...
That's what they get paid for.
That's what they get paid for, and you know prosecutors get paid as well. Let me ask you this. There's been some pretty intense criticism of your two colleagues on that jury, the two that we call them the holdouts in this kind of a situation. Some pretty harsh words from some of our viewers. Now, as someone who's been through the process, what's your reaction to that? I know you disagree with these two, and probably pretty strongly, but what would you say to those who weren't on the jury who feel the need to criticize the holdouts, or really to criticize any of you?
Well, they don't know what really happened in there. Only, you know, the 12 know what happened in there. Certainly, I think, and I want to believe that they all deliberated in good faith. Actually, at the end, we all hugged. I mean, I hugged number 10 and number 1. I'm sure that they're probably feeling what you mentioned, and that's, you know, we all have to, you know, the consequences of our decisions, and as a result of that, they'll have to live with it, as those of us who voted guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, and clearly all of you understood that each juror is to arrive at his or her own verdict, and each of you has to live with the way you voted. So it's important for jurors to not feel too terribly pressured as a matter of politics. You're supposed to be looking at the law. And speaking of the law, let me ask you what you think the most important piece of evidence prosecutors put before you was, because you were one of those who walked in knowing that this had been proved, in your view, by prosecutors. What did it for you? What sort of cinched it for you and kept you on that side of the case throughout?
Well, I think it was, I used the scale as I went into this jury trial. Pretty much the 5 women. Beyond that, it was Adriano. So I think, in all honesty, it was sort of this story that was presented to us by the prosecution. Not a story like a fairy tale, but I think Mr. Jackson did a wonderful job in bringing us with him, and like in the closing, don't go. I mean, it was done, I think, in a masterful way.
Yeah, he's quite a talented young man, and certainly put his heart and soul into the case, as I believe at least some, maybe even most of the defense team did. Ricardo, I'm going to keep you here. I'm told that you'll stay with us for another block. Ricardo Enriquez, juror number 9, is so kind. He's got to be exhausted, kind enough to come. It's very early in Los Angeles and be with us there on location. But I want to jump over to Beth Karras, because something that Mr. Enriquez has said has triggered a conversation we've had many times, Beth, and it's all about reasonable doubt. And we can talk about the prior bad acts, witnesses, and Adriana de Souza, and whether the gun was in her hand. But it seems to me that really what it came down to in that jury room, Beth, was different notions of what reasonable doubt is. And Mr. Enriquez just mentioned the scale, and for him, Alan Jackson and Pat Dixon had tipped the scale. And it seems to me that at least for the foreman, and maybe for both of the 2 holdouts, that scale was far from being tipped, and that suggests just a different definition in their minds.
That's correct. And I think that you can say that about juror number 10, not 1, because she did flip-flop, and I think if juror number 10 had changed his vote to guilt, she would have also. But it was juror number 10 who was really steadfast. And there are times when jurors hold prosecutors to a burden that's higher than reasonable doubt. And it sounds, from what I've learned in the last 15 hours or so, that juror number 10 was holding the prosecution to something far more than reasonable doubt.
But
all
Beth,
doubt,
is
beyond
that
a shadow of a doubt.
But is that fair, Beth? Isn't it the case that even with all of the help that a judge like Judge Fidler gives you on reasonable doubt, it really is a kind of amorphous concept, and the lawyers argue it, and when you get back there, each juror is going to have a slightly different notion of what it is.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But to every bit of the prosecution's evidence that I've been able to question Ricardo about, it seems that he had a response. Number 10 had a response. He just wasn't buying anything. He was constantly asking questions. Maybe he was asking questions of the defense as well, but he just wasn't willing to accept anything. He's a scientist. He's an engineer. Historically, they're not great for prosecutors because of that. You know what? A defense lawyer, Bob George, who defended Chris McCowan in Cape Cod last fall, told me during deliberations here, he once had 3 engineers on a 26-kilo drug case, and it was interstate trafficking, and the 3 engineers and the jury deadlocked, not on whether or not the defendant had done it, because they couldn't agree on the weight. That kind of precision, these 3 engineers, okay? So they don't necessarily bode well for prosecutors.
No, it's a great lesson, I think, for lawyers on both sides of the island, certainly for the lawyers here going forward on who to put on a jury and maybe who to strike. So there you go. I think these 2 are to be commended because they held to their positions under considerable pressure, and I think all of the jurors are to be respected for the time and conscientiousness they put in here. We've got one of those with us, Ricardo Enriquez. He's going to stay with us for another block, so let's take a quick break. We're going to check back in with him and ask him about some of the specifics in the case. Right now, we want you to take a look at our 13th juror question, and we're asking whether you think prosecutors should try Mr. Spector again. 88% of you say yes, 12% voting no. I'm guessing those 12 are the Californians who don't want to spend any more tax dollars on this case. Log on to CourtTVNews.com. Cast your vote. This is The Best Defense. We'll be right back.
Whoever said it was a man's world never met these women.
Come on, let's go, let's go!
Meet Miami's bounty girls.
Come out of the house with your hands up!
The brains.
You're looking for more information, you lead.
The brawn.
We're gonna have to taser this guy.
The babe.
Well, bring him out with my big, sexy, luring waves.
And the boss.
What the happened?
4 real women, 1 mean team.
What do you take somebody down tonight?
Bounty Girls Miami, an all-new episode, tonight at 10 on Court TV.
I might break a few too many rules, but someday I'm gonna change them.
Kids with ADHD are sometimes known for their disability, but someday they could be known for their abilities.
Sometimes I disrupt class, but someday I'll disrupt conventional thinking.
As a parent, you know your child with ADHD has unique talents, and you wish the whole world could see them the way you do. You also know that treatment is helping, but is there something else you can do? Well, now there's a free ADHD Roadmap to Success kit, designed by both professional ADHD coaches and moms. For yours, call 1-800-616-4185 and see why a kid that doesn't always sit still today could be going places.
I don't always follow directions, but someday I'll be on the board of directors.
This new kit gives you a 4-step roadmap for your ADHD child to help keep them consistently moving towards success. It starts by taking a snapshot of where your child is today, identifying strengths and areas for improvement. Then it helps you map out a success plan, setting realistic and meaningful goals. Step 3 lets you take action with practical tips to help your child achieve their goals by working with teachers to help them do their best every day. Plus 10 tips to help improve focus, organization, and behavior at school and at home. Finally, a goal tracker helps you track and reward your child's success, letting you actually see their progress towards each milestone, so you know you're helping your child succeed and someday maybe exceed.
I wasn't picked first on the team, but someday I'm gonna own one.
For your free ADHD Roadmap to Success kit, call 1-800-616-4185 now or visit ADHDroadmap.com. It could make a real difference for your child today and tomorrow.
I have a little trouble in school, but someday I just might teach the world something.
You gave it everything you had for 35 years, and now you've been diagnosed with mesothelioma. If you or a loved one has mesothelioma, call 1-800-306-2654 now. We have successfully helped over 1,700 victims and families get the compensation they deserved. Mesothelioma is relentless. That doesn't mean you can't fight it. For a free legal consultation, call 1-800-306-2654 now.
Homeowners, want to refinance and get cash? Countrywide has a great reason to do it now. A no-cost refi. It has no points, no credit reporting fee, no processing fee, no document fee, and no third-party fees. No title or escrow fees. Absolutely no closing costs. So you wind up with a lot more cash. Call now and ask for a no-cost refi. We're America's #1 home loan lender, and no one can do what Countrywide can. Call 1-800-641-8298.
Tune in for back-to-back episodes of Inside American Jail. At 9, it's a Forensic Files doubleheader. And at 10, catch a brand new episode of Bounty Girls Miami on Court TV.
I don't think any jury has worked harder than the jury on this trial, searching the facts, weighing the evidence, and I just wanted to thank all of them for their service and for the opportunity that this has been for all of us to experience the judicial system of this country and the great system that it is.
That's the foreman in the Spector trial, juror number 10, as he was known to us, in an effort to respect and protect the anonymity of jurors. And he voted, we now know, as per his public statements, to acquit. Did not want to convict, I think would be the better way to put it. We are also joined by juror number 9, who is happy to tell us his name. It's Ricardo Enriquez, and we thank you again, sir, for being with us. What about the comments, because y'all were on the opposite sides of this case, but what about the comments the foreman made just there? I would imagine you agree with that sentiment, that the jury worked very hard and that for all of you, it's been a significant experience in your lives.
That we did. And early on, one of the things that one of the jurors expressed to us is that our lives will forever be changed as a result of this experience. And maybe not in the immediate now, I think, we'll never be the same as a result of this. And I'm not meaning in a negative way. I think the friendships that we built and the camaraderie we had was sincere. And, and I'll be honest, I miss them.
Oh, that's sweet. I bet you Judge Fidler could arrange for you guys to meet periodically at the courthouse. I'm guessing.
A redo, huh?
Yeah, a redo. I'm guessing that after you get a little distance, Ricardo, you'll be just fine with those other folks.
Oh, sure. Another thing is, we even asked the judge if we could get a life pass from jury service, but no.
You sure deserve that. But you know what? You've proved your mettle. They'll want you even more, I think, after this. So let's talk about some of the evidence in particular. And I want to have you take yet another listen to something we all speculated you were looking at in the jury room. Let's play it for our viewers, and then we'll get your reaction.
When he comes to the door, what does he say? When he opened the door, I get out of the car. You got out of the car? Yeah, I got out of the car. And what did he say? I think I killed somebody. So you clearly heard what he said? Yes. I mean, there was no doubt. And then you see the gun in his hand? Okay. Yes.
So, of course, you know, Ricardo Enriquez, that is Adriana de Souza in his police interview. And a few days ago, y'all asked for a VCR, so we went about our mad speculation. What could they be looking at? And the only thing we could figure from the 500 pieces of evidence was that videotape. Were we right about that?
That's correct.
All right, so
we watched all I think was an hour and 15 minutes of it, and made notes.
What were you looking for? Were you looking for Mr. de Souza's language ability? Were you looking for his clarity of thought? What inspired you to go back to that piece of evidence?
I think what we were looking for was, or the other jurors were looking for, was maybe inconsistencies. Or maybe there was a point there where he said, I think it's my English, but it wasn't the way I understood that to be, was that he was being questioned so many times about the same thing that he wanted to express to him, to the person interviewing him, I'm sorry, it's not my I don't understand that you don't understand me. I believe that Adriano understood everything that was asked of him. He probably felt, or in my opinion, felt that they weren't understanding him. And that's why he kept apologizing. I think it's my English.
And did those of you who speak several languages, or at least more than one language, talk with others on the jury about precisely that issue, share your experiences and sort of expert knowledge of bilingual and multilingual people?
Well, we did, actually. I mentioned the fact that in some cases we people would, who don't speak several languages will try to communicate a concept. That was my way to try to explain it to the other jurors. Another instance was one of the jurors is married to a Japanese lady and who is also English as a second language. And he mentioned something about this concept of parroting, where people who are not native speakers will parrot what they hear because they don't know enough about the language to even try to change it or conjugate a verb. So what they do is parrot what they hear. And that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Another juror who came to this country when he was 11 years old also said, people sometimes don't understand what I'm saying, but I understand everything they're saying. So I think people seem to confuse the accent with the inability to understand what's being explained to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. My mother's a bilingual education professor, and she said to me many times when I was growing up, as I heard you say earlier, you can hear and understand just fine, even if you may not be able to articulate. And anybody who speaks or is learning to speak a new language realizes that you do begin to hear and understand sooner than you can conjugate verbs and communicate anything more than simple concepts. I do think, though, that it was a fair area for the defense to explore. Did they go too far? I'll ask you straight up. Did Bruce Cutler offend you with his siesta? And by the way, they don't really take them where Mr. D'Souza is from. I don't even think they use the word siesta. Did that offend you?
Don't.
Not to mention cookies. He talked all about the man eating cookies and drinking soda. I didn't really understand the relevance of that. How did the opening statement on D'Souza prime you for hearing his testimony?
I kind of laughed at the whole, I didn't realize that he was Brazilian and spoke Portuguese, and maybe Mr. Cutler didn't either. One of the jurors on the panel happens to be, was on a Mormon mission for 2 years in Brazil and spoke fluent Portuguese. And one of my first questions in the deliberation, in the jury room was, how do you say nap or siesta in Portuguese? And he said, well, it's not siesta. It's, he said it was something like the word sona or zona or something like that. So, that was interesting because another juror who also happened to be bilingual was the one who was criticizing D'Souza the hardest regarding his accent or his inability to understand what Mr. Spector was trying to say that morning. And, it didn't make any sense to me. I understood him perfectly. Most of the jurors did. And again, you take all of the evidence in its totality, and you can accept or dismiss or accept part of it or give it a different weight. And to me, it was just part of the puzzle that made sense.
Yeah, we all felt out here, Ricardo, that Adriano D'Souza's testimony was key for prosecutors. Sure, there was the science, and yes, there were the 5 prior bad act witnesses, but D'Souza was the man who was there that night. And one of the things that always struck me as odd about the case is that if you believe D'Souza, Spector said, I think I killed somebody, not I just shot somebody, I shot one. I think I killed somebody, which suggested to me, Ricardo, an accident of some sort, not a full-on confession to murder. Do you wish that prosecutors had given you that option, or defense attorneys for that matter? Do you wish that another theory had been on the table? And if it had, would it have made a difference for the two who were holding out? Or were they so focused on suicide that they might not have even gone there?
It's hard to say. We did mention the fact it was just maybe some terrible accident that happened. Again, it was something that only Mr. Spector and Lana would know, and Lana's dead, and he didn't testify. But based on the evidence preceding and when Mr. Spector came out and announced and confessed, in essence, to me that he had killed someone, and then the wiping the gun and cleaning up and moving the evidence and having those 40 minutes that we really can't account for, it was really pretty easy for me to draw my own conclusion regarding his guilt or innocence.
Which kind of...
the others had a harder time with that.
It kind of takes me to my last question, because I know we can't keep you here all day. You've got to be ready. I appreciate your taking this time. You got to be ready for a break from all of this. But what about Mr. Spector's decision not to testify, which of course we all understand is his right under our system. It's one of the things that makes our system the great system that it is. No one's compelled to testify against him or herself. But as a juror, did that weigh into your decision, and do you think he could have made a difference if he had testified?
In my opinion, for me, no. We never mentioned it in the deliberations. It was something that was pretty much off limits. We were not to think about whether he did or didn't. And, for a lot of things, we were pretty easy to divorce ourselves from certain things that we were told to ignore per the instructions from the judge. Judge Fiddler is a pretty imposing figure up there. I'd hate to cross him.
Yeah. Yes, I think some folks affiliated with this case learned that lesson by doing just that. Well, I can't thank you enough, Ricardo Enriquez, for being with us, but more importantly, for your service in this 5-month-long process, an intense one indeed, and for your very conscientious and and thoughtful deliberations. We so appreciate it. And I hope that you will know that the system indeed has worked and that you should be proud of your service to it.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, we're going to let this man go and have a break from all of this as we continue our Spector coverage. We still have our guests on deck. We've got Beth Karras coming back at the top of the hour and some other special guests along the way. Stay with us. Lots more in our verdict wrap-up in People versus Phil Spector.
An entire city is gripped with fear, and profiler Dale Hinman discovers a shocking pattern.
He's going to commit another crime soon.
Can investigators stop the Phoenix City rapist before he strikes again? On an all-new Body of Evidence, Saturday at 9 on Court TV.
Fact. You're receiving a structured settlement from a lawsuit. Fact. It's being paid out over years. Question. Should you wait to get your money down the road? Or get a cash lump sum now? Call Peachtree Settlement Funding. Get cash for credit cards, medical bills, or a down payment on a house. No one has more expertise than Peachtree in turning your structured settlement into cash today. And that's a fact. Life doesn't wait. Why should you?
Call now, 1-800-444-9634.
If you're having problems with hard water buildup, soap scum, calcium and lime stains, then you need Kaboom. Spray Kaboom on a shower door and it gets the tough stuff. Kaboom! And the soap scum is gone. If you're having problems with ring around the toilet, then you need Bowl Blaster from Kaboom. One scoop and its incredible foaming action rises to the rim for cleaning without hard scrubbing. Kaboom does the hard work for you.
Grande, non-fat skim, mocha chocolate, extra foam with whipped cream.
That's you.
You know what would go great with this cut? Honey on a copper glazed highlights.
Okay.
Great choice.
Attention Kate, choose Quilted Northern Ultra. You trade up for everything else, why not your bath tissue?
Only Quilted Northern Ultra can give you unique plush quilts, so it's ultra soft and ultra thick.
So go ahead, upgrade to Quilted Northern Ultra.
Treat yourself to plush quilts every day. Quilted Northern Ultra.
The jury deadlocked, a mistrial declared in the Phil Spector murder trial. So what's next for the music mogul? More reaction from some of the jurors in the case when the best defense returns.
When I signed up for Vonage, I was able to keep my phone number, and then when I moved, I was able to take it with me.
Call quality is the utmost. It projects my business. And with Vonage, it's perfect.
Vonage and reliability, that just kind of goes hand in hand.
It's just $24.99 a month for unlimited local and long distance. Call now and get 1 month free, including free calls to the U.S., Canada, Puerto Rico, and Europe.
Call now, 1-800-975-4820.
I'm Mark Goldston, Chairman and CEO of Net Zero. All internet providers take you to the same internet, so why pay more to get there? Net Zero is only $9.95 a month, and we give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 1-800-NET-ZERO or visit netzero.com.
Hey, there's that Bamzoo spot.
Oh, I love Bamzoo.com.
Bamzoo has many of the great products advertised on Turner Broadcasting.
It's easy to shop online. No run into stores or remembering phone numbers. Just log on.
You know, we could do a Bamzoo commercial.
You think?
She's the one everybody loves talking about. Well, now, it's her turn.
I'm holding nothing back.
Star Jones is now on Court TV. It's the place where today's top stories get the star treatment.
Everyone's talking the talk, but I'll speak the truth.
So if you're thinking about it, she's talking about it.
I know the score.
Star Jones. Today at 3.
Live on Court TV.
At this time, I will find that the jury is unable to arrive at a verdict and declare a mistrial in this matter.
After 5 months, more than 70 witnesses and hundreds of exhibits, Phil Spector's murder trial ends in a deadlock. This is The Best Defense. I'm Jamie Floyd. Well, the jury hung up 10-2 in Spector's murder trial. The music legend's still a free man. And what if the case is tried? Well, maybe a look at some other cases that end in mistrials would be helpful here. So that'll be our sidebar for today, the mistrial mystery. What does a deadlock really mean for the future of a case? Let's start with the Menendez brothers, also out in L.A. Eric and Lyle were tried for their parents' murders back in '93, and after months of testimony and weeks of deliberations, 2 separate juries deadlocked on each brother's case. But then the brothers were retried together 3 years later, and this time that single jury reached a verdict: guilty. Lyle and Eric Menendez were both sentenced to life in prison. Fred Newlander's murder trial also hung up. The New Jersey rabbi was accused of hiring hitmen to murder his wife in '94. 6 years later, his jury deadlocked in his first trial, but he too was retried and this time convicted. In 2002, the rabbi is now also serving a life sentence. And then there is Jason Williams. The NBA star was tried in New Jersey for the shooting death of a limo driver at his home. Williams was acquitted of the most serious charge, aggravated manslaughter, but the jury deadlocked on the charge of reckless manslaughter, and a mistrial was declared as to that charge alone. Williams is awaiting retrial on reckless manslaughter. So, will the state retry Phil Spector, and if so, what results? And I'll bring my guests back into it, Darren Kavinoky and Paul Martin. And I guess the question of whether Alan Jackson goes after Phil Spector again, that's been answered. You saw he got annoyed with even the suggestion that he wouldn't want to pursue this case. But Paul Martin, let me come to you first. Of the cases we mentioned, I think maybe Jason Williams is most instructive, because they had several possibilities, the jury did, and now they're going to go back after him on the one lesser charge. Maybe here the prosecutor needs to think about coming after him on some other theory.
Well, on the Jason Williams matter, I think that's what's taken so long to try that case, to retry it, is the issues that were raised during the first trial. I'm not so sure that's the case in the Spector case. I think the assistant will retry the case, whether it's him or someone else. I don't think there should be any personal vendetta against Mr. Spector. The prosecutor has a job to do. You present the evidence that's put forward to you. So I think they'll try the case. The prosecution will make determination who will try the case, and I think in this situation it's probably better for the defense.
Well, I agree with you on that, and I want to get to that in a minute. But Paul Martin, I know you were a former prosecutor, and you never, I am sure, had a personal vendetta, but I bet you know of cases where that happens, you know, sort of like Jean Valjean and Les Mis, where you just get so involved in a case, it becomes your great white whale, and you've got to bring this guy down. That can't happen, can't it?
Not where I was trained and not where I was prepared. I mean, I would get emotional during my trials. I get emotional now. And I try to view the other side as a professional. I try to view the judges as professionals. And when the case is over, to be quite frank with you, I move on to the next case and pick up the next file. And I think most prosecutors, if they have that type of mentality, justice will be served, because there is no personal vendetta that has to be resolved. There is not a number that you have to get. I have to get a conviction. You have to just, prove your case.
Darren, let me come out to you in Los Angeles. What are you hearing? Is Alan Jackson going to pursue this? Or I guess I should say Pat and Alan. Pat Dixon, who was the silent partner there in the court, but very much, I think, played a role behind the scenes. Do you think the office is going after Phil Spector again?
Oh, there's no question in my mind that they will go after him again, and it's highly likely. I'd be shocked if it was other than Alan Jackson and Pat Dixon who picked it up and ran with this again. Certainly not because of any personal vendetta reason or anything of the sort. It's just simply that Alan and Pat are quite well prepared on the case, having gone through it again. Or to go through it again with different folks would be to squander some precious resources. And I really do believe that they did a great job in trying the case that they had, and that the reason the jury hung is not because of any particular failing on the part of Alan or Pat. It really harks back to something we've discussed before, and that is that jury selection is indeed one of the most important parts, if not the most important parts, of a jury trial.
Well, let me interrupt you there.
And from a defense...
Let me interrupt you there, because with that in mind, I think we were reminded yesterday that the jury is really what it's all about in any case, and a deadlock jury, I think, points that up in some ways more than a jury that gets to a result. And we'll talk about jury selection maybe the next time around in a minute, but let's not move away from these jurors quite so quickly. Let's take a look at a little more of their press conference after the announcement of the mistrial.
I guess I'll start. As the foreman of the jury, I just wanted to come and thank the jury for the service they provided. I know this decision, or the inability to reach a decision, is controversial to most, and that even on the jury, there's deep regret that we were unable to reach a unanimous verdict. I don't think any jury has worked harder than the jury on this trial, searching the facts, weighing the evidence, and I just want to thank all of them for their service and for the opportunity that this has been for all of us to experience the judicial system of this country and the great system that it is. Thank you. That was good.
Give us your name, please.
No.
Okay, that's fine. You gonna answer any questions?
Yeah. I might later.
What was the holdup? The two people who didn't vote for conviction, what was the thing that held them up? Was it the jacket? Was it?
No. Well, part of it was forensics, and part of it was his hand being on the gun. If it was on the gun, that was what part of it was, and part of it was a psychological profile of Lana Clarkson.
Or the not doing the psychological.
Not doing the psychological profile. Some thought she didn't have enough. There wasn't enough background to say yes. You know, she did it, and some thought there was enough background to say yes. Possibly she did kill herself.
And he harkens back to the Blake case. They couldn't put the gun in Spector's hand, at least for two of these jurors. Now, right now, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. The jury has deadlocked in the Spector trial. More reaction to the mistrial when the best defense returns.
From the creator of Cops.
We have the product for a small party.
All right. Inside American Jail.
You on fire, man.
An all-new episode.
Thanks for arresting us.
Premieres tonight at 8:30 on Court TV.
The natural condition of our eyes is moist, but sometimes your eyes don't produce enough tears. If you use over-the-counter eye drops or artificial tears several times a day, ask your eye doctor about Restasis. Restasis helps increase your natural ability to produce tears, which may be reduced by inflammation due to chronic dry eye.
You can have chronic dry eye without knowing it, like me, and my doctor prescribed Restasis. It's the only eye drop that helps your eyes increase tear production with continued use.
Go to Restasis75.com or call 1-877-447-6403 to get your free information kit and a $20 rebate. Restasis should not be used by patients with active eye infections and has not been studied in patients with a history of herpes viral infections of the eye. The most common side effect is a temporary burning sensation.
One drop twice a day with continued use helps me make more of my own tears. My tears. Thanks, Restasis.
Make an appointment with your eye doctor to see if Restasis is right for you.
Would you like to learn how to get the most cash for your structured settlement or annuity payments? I'm here to tell you that J.G. Wentworth can provide the most cash right now for those monthly insurance payments. J.G. Wentworth helps thousands of people just like you get the cash they need today. It's your money. Use it when you need it. Call J.G. Wentworth today.
Call 866-393-4970.
This is Maya, and if she doesn't look too happy, she isn't. Maya, like many people, has too much credit card debt. How about you? Do you have $5, $10, $15, or even $25,000 or more in credit card debt? Are your creditors harassing you at all hours? Are you tired of going through life feeling like Maya? I'm Todd Cook, founder of 800 Credit Card Debt. Day in and